All right, everyone ready to go? Great. All right, hello. Welcome to the GRadulting Workshop Series. My name is Debbie McCutsky, and I'm the coordinator of services and programs for graduate student legal aid. I use she, her pronouns. Our focus today is taxes for international students. So if you are looking for help, you are in the right place. There are so many resources to help you meet that April 15th deadline, so stay tuned. Before we start the presentation, I want to make sure that you all know a little bit about legal aid and how we can help. In addition to this workshop and the GRadulting Workshop Series, we support students in a number of ways. We have an attorney on staff who helps students with legal issues. We work with an immigration attorney who helps our international students. If a student gets charged by the university, we have advocates on staff who assist them. And I am a notary public, so I can notarize your documents. If you've paid your student fee, then you've already paid for our services. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help. All of this information is on our website. You can go there to learn more about our services and to request an appointment. So just a bit of housekeeping. You can turn on your closed captioning if you would like to read along. Near the end of the workshop, I will post a link to an evaluation. We want your feedback. We want to hear the good and the bad and all of your suggestions. We will email links to the survey, the slides, and the recording to everyone who registered. And we always post those links on our website as well. We welcome your questions and comments throughout the workshop. Please use the Q&A feature, not the chat. Use the Q&A feature. We know there's going to be a lot of questions. We don't want to miss any, so that Q&A feature helps us keep track of those questions. All right, let's move on to our speakers and our facilitator. I'm so pleased to introduce them because they generously share their time and their talent to help students understand their tax obligations, prepare them, and get them in on time. And they have done this for years, and it's been such a pleasure to work with them. First up is Susan Ellis Dougherty. Sue is the Director of International Student and Scholar Services at the University of Maryland, College Park. As the director, she's responsible for immigration practice and policies for about 4,000 international students every year. So welcome, Sue. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks, Debbie, and welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming to the session to learn about taxes.
Yeah. All right, next up, I'm going to introduce Sam Handwerger. Sam is a certified public accountant and a full-time lecturer in the Robert H. Smith School of Business. He also serves as the advisor for TerpTax. Last year, TerpTax volunteers served over 700 international students. You may have been one of them, but Sam has a lot of good information to share with us today. So welcome, Sam.
Hey, thank you.
All right. Thank you all for being here today, whether you're on Zoom or you're here with us or you're watching the recording. I'm going to turn everything over to Sam and Sue now. Take it away.
Okay, Sue, you want to do any other introductory remarks?
No, Sam, I think I will leave the presentation for you to lead, and then if there's anything I can add in, I will go ahead and do that with you. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, before we begin the topic in detail, we are talking about the United States income tax system as it applies to international students. These are people who are non-residents when looking at the tax law. They're non-residents to the United States for tax purposes. They are here on special visas, generally F1 or J1. That is the real target of our audience today. So if that's you, great. If you're sort of in the middle, but you're you are not a U.S. resident at this time, this is still for you. So before we begin the actual details of taxes, where I'll go through some slides and give you some general principles of what the tax rules are for the F1, J1 students, let me just give you an introduction, which I think applies to our audience by and large. We have a lot of STEM students here from the master's program, PhD program. So, and even if you're not, even if you're some other degree discipline, most of you have heard of the name of Albert Einstein, famous physicist, whose theories are still widely studied and proven. Albert Einstein was recorded as saying, and when I say recorded, he had witnesses who heard him say that the most difficult topic in the world, and this is Albert Einstein, the most difficult topic in the world is the income tax. So if you get confused, you are in good company. All right, let's see what we can do. I'm going to go to my screen and take a look. All right, so what we're trying to do here is we are trying to take a broad approach to what is the information that you need to know if you're F1 or J1 international student, and away we go. So this is the main thing that we're focusing on, J1's included. And for the most part, the principles that we're going to be talking about apply to students. There are similar principles for teachers and researchers, but they have slight limitations, but they generally apply as well. All right, doing well. Let's just talk about the American tax system so you know where you fit in when it comes to how taxes apply to you here. Oops, a lot of words on this. So let's go through slowly the bullets. If you earn money in the United States, you must pay an income tax on that. When I say you must pay, that's going to be modified perhaps by your particular country's tax treaty. We'll see. First, let's learn the general principles that applies to everybody. So this is, again, for non-residents. This is not for citizens or people who are outside of F1 or J1. If you earn money in the United States, you'll probably have a income tax reporting obligation and potentially have to pay taxes. What you do is you pay taxes to our federal government and you pay taxes to the state in which you are residing. So if you live in Maryland, you will be paying taxes to the United States government and Maryland, and that is provided you have income from the source of where you're living, meaning the U.S. states, the U.S. source, and sourced in some place within the states of the United States. Source means you're getting the money from somebody in the U.S., a school, an employer, a bank in the United States. You're getting some money from these sources that are here in the United States, not from your home country. We don't tax you on your money from your home country. We don't tax you on gifts from your family from your home country or other countries around the world. We only are concerned about what you're earning here. Second principle, or third principle here. After you file your tax returns, what will happen is that you will be telling the respective governments, federal government, state government, those are respective governments, you're going to tell them how much tax was your tax liability. You're going to compare that. They're going to compare it to how much you've already paid in through withholding tax, because your payors often withhold some tax and pay it to the federal government and the state government in your behalf. Let me say that again. As you earn U.S. source income, your payors, whether it's a scholarship or an employer, are often withholding some tax for the federal government and or the state. They send it to the state and or the federal government in your behalf. At the end of the day, when you figure out how much you really do owe, it will be compared to what's been already paid, that withholding. Let's call that word withholding so you can see that. And if you have had more money paid in from your overall withholding than you need to, you will get a refund. If you haven't had enough withholding to pay your actual tax liability, you will owe. Sorry about that. But that is not that it's bad. It's just that you didn't have everything withheld. There's nothing wrong with that. Not having everything withheld, having too much withheld, there's nothing wrong. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. It's just a reconciliation. How much did you earn? How much is taxable? What is the tax? What was paid with withholding? What wasn't paid? That's all it is. Don't get alarmed if you're told you owe some tax. Don't get alarmed if you have a refund. Well, if you have a refund, perhaps that's a nice thing. Okay. All right. Last principle in this slide is saying what we just said. Is that at the end of the year, you do a reconciliation. If you paid more, you're going to get a refund. If you paid less, you'll pay the difference. All right. So the overall formula, one more time, just so you can see it, is if you had U.S. source income, it's also coming from a state somewhere, either Maryland or some other state, and you will file a tax return on a form, and you're going to compute what the tax is supposed to be. It may be zero, or even with you having income, it may be zero due to tax treaties or due to the tax rates that we have here, or it may be some number. Then you're going to look at what the withholding was, and you'll reconcile, and it'll tell you at the end of the day, here in this case, you owe $10. It could be that the withholding was that number, and you're going to get a refund of 90. That's the formula. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Not so easy to do, but that's the idea. All right. All right. Now, let's talk about what F1 and J1 visa holders must do, even if you have no U.S. source income. Before we were talking about if you have U.S. source income, if you have no U.S. source income, no tuition plan that is over and above, no scholarship that's over and above your tuition, meaning all of your scholarship money is going to pay your tuition and required fees, you have no TA or RA positions, you're not working anywhere, no CPT, OPT, then the only form you need to file, and this is an emphasis, this must be done. Well, that's the word must. There it is. The word must means must. Every year, this form must be filed. It's called 8843. That's the number. And what we're going to do is take a look at the form so you can see what we're talking about. First, let's go to the slide that reinforces what I just said, even if you do not have any income. So this is the basic requirement for 8843. This is what it looks like. And now you know why income taxes are complicated. It's actually a fairly straightforward form. We won't go through all the details except to tell you what it's doing. What it's doing is, this is what will apply to you, is it's telling the U.S. government that you're here under F1 or J1 visa, and that based on our tax law, those visa statuses do not require you to count your days towards determining whether or not you're a resident for U.S. tax purposes. Let's just do that in one little sidebar here. When you are F1, J1, you do not have to count your days that you are here to determine if you're a resident. This applies for 5 calendar years. 5 calendar years. Once you begin your F1 and you're here, you have 5 calendar years where your days do not count. You cannot become a tax resident, and that's good because the only tax you'll have to pay would be on the U.S. source income. So for the first 5 calendar years, you don't have to worry about tax from income outside the United States. U.S. citizens pay tax on their worldwide income. You don't have to worry about that. You only have to worry about U.S. source. And what this form does is it tells the U.S. government that you are within your first 5 calendar years. That's what it tells them. And that's a good thing to tell them so that they know where you are holding in terms of being exempt from having to report all of your worldwide income and only pay tax on the income earned in the United States or sourced from the United States. So that's what you do with an 8843. And you must do that, like we said, every year, even if you don't earn income, because you want to keep your visa status in good standing. If you don't file this every year and your visa status gets called into question for some reason, one of the things the authorities might do is say, well, you didn't even file your 8843, so you violated your visa requirements. So you do want to file this. Now, Glacier Tax Prep, which you all have access to, can do this for you. So it's important to say right now, if you didn't have any U.S. source income, all you need to do is file this form. You can rely on Glacier by going there as provided by the school, doing whatever it needs you to do one line with to get it started. And through Glacier's tax prep, you will, at the end of just a few slides, a few screens, you're going to get the 8843 with instructions on what to do with it, sign it, where to mail it, and you would be done. So if that's you, I don't want you to leave, but you could almost say you're done. All right. Okay. So that's the main requirement, is this 8843 form every year. Now, in the event that you never filed it and you've been here a year or two already, you can go back and file it now. The good news is there's no statutory penalty, so filing it late will not lead to any repercussions, and you don't have to worry about filing it late where the immigration department's going to say, well, you didn't file it on time, so you're now in big trouble. No, that's not what will happen. What will happen is you are now in compliance. So you don't want to be in limbo, not in compliance. File any year's 8843 that you haven't filed thus far. All right, let's move along a little bit. So, do international students pay taxes if they are working or interning in the US? I think we now know the answer is, well, maybe. It says yes, but it's a maybe, because maybe your tax treaty from the country you come from will not tax all the income in the US. However, yes, you must file an income tax return if you have any US source income. Even if it results in zero tax, you got to tell the federal government that by filing the income tax return. Okay, so who are these people who have US source income? Again, we're going back and repeating a little bit so you can make sure everybody's on this right page. You have employment here, you have internships, it's through OPT, and you filled out probably with whoever's going to pay you. You probably filled out a W-4 form, which just tells them how to withhold taxes for you. That's all it does. That's not a tax return itself. These are the sources, as well as from scholarships and from research assistants within the university itself. Okay, this is what the W-4 looks like. The employer would have given it to you. You basically just fill out your name, answer a few questions, and they'll know how to withhold from your paycheck or your stipend that you're getting. All right. Just so you'll know, sources of U.S. income, not all of which would apply to most of us here, but these are some of the sources that do apply. It's being paid wages, meaning a salary, tips from jobs that you might have, not usual for F1J1s, but possible, interest from a bank, dividends from stocks that you own in the U.S. stock markets. Some scholarships, fellowship grants are taxable. And if you go win the lottery or go to Las Vegas, some of those prizes and awards are taxable. All right, again, at the end of the year, we're repeating, but at the end of the year, you'll file if you have any of this kind of income, you'll file a non-resident income tax return. Glacier, by the way, Glacier Tax Prep will tell you if you do comply with the non-resident status. I'm going to go through that again in a second, but Glacier will help you determine whether you're not or whether you are a resident for tax purposes. If you're a non-resident, by following what Glacier tells you you are, this is what you need to file if you have U.S. source income. Form 1040, the NR stands for, you guessed it, non-resident. All right, so how do you know? All right, go to Glacier Tax Prep. That's one way. Here are the tests. Absent F1, if you're a citizen, you're automatically, notwithstanding F1, I should say, if you're a citizen of the United States, you are a resident. If you are a green card holder, you're a resident. If you don't have F1J1, or you have it and you're outside of the 5 years, the 5 calendar years, then you have to do the substantial presence test. And it basically means if you're here greater than 183 days, you're going to be a resident for tax purposes. Basically, it means greater than or equal to 183 days in the calendar year. Let's look at that calendar year test that Glacier Tax Prep will help you determine if you're a resident or not for F1. Let's just take a look at it for purposes of understanding what it means calendar year. Let's say you arrived in 2018 and you're here every year since. And when you arrived in 2018, you arrived on December 31. That counts as 1 day, but 1 year, because it's in a calendar year. So there's year 1. This would be year 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see you're outside of the 5 years by the time you get to 2023. And now if you're here 183 days or more, you're going to be a resident for tax purposes, and you're not subject to this lecture. You're subject to next week's lecture on domestic taxpayers. So that's what it means, calendar year. Just 1 day here, 1 day, even in any of these years, if it was just 1 day, all those years count as a calendar year under the F1. So it's a little strict, it's a little stringent, but you do get the 5 years. And most people aren't here just 1 day out of all these years. It's possible that because of COVID, 20 and 21 may have looked like it looks here, but most likely you're gonna be able to use most of the calendar days in each of these calendar years. Like any good law, there's exceptions to the rules. We won't have time to go through all those exceptions, but I just want to mention that in any 1 year, you can be both a non-resident and a resident for U.S. tax purposes. That's possible, particularly if you are in, let's say, 2023, and that becomes your year that you switch from F1 to some other visa status like H-1B. In that case, you're going to need some definite tax assistance to see what you do with a year like that. You're probably going to have a part year non-resident and a part year resident year. So you'll be filing 2 different types of tax returns. You also have a first year choice to be treated as a resident when you are no longer F1, when you've expired your 5 calendar years, when you're not F1, and you are now looking at being a resident because of the 183-day rule. You have some choices. You may decide, depending on the circumstances, to claim closer connection to your foreign country, so you still can file as a non-resident. Perhaps you have a non-resident spouse. Perhaps the tax treaty gives you certain rights to continue to be taxed as a non-resident. All I'm trying to get here, since these are all very detailed, is I'm just letting you know that just because you go through your 5 calendar years doesn't necessarily automatically mean you're going to be a resident for tax purposes. Most likely, yes, but the main takeaway is, with the exceptions, the main takeaway is don't guess on what those exceptions do for you. See an expert, and we'll tell you what experts we have here at the school for you as we get to the end, but it's TerpTax and it's me. We can analyze that together if this applies to you. So if 2023 or 2024 is now outside of your 5 calendar years as F1J1, then it's a good time. It's a good point in your tax life here, if you're going to continue to stay, to meet with me and discuss what the situation might mean for you from a tax standpoint. All right, how do I know if I made U.S. income? We talked about what they are. I've given you names, but how do you know? So you're going to ask questions like, where did you perform the services? If the answer is U.S., that's U.S. source. Where is your current residence? And even though you might be non-resident for U.S. tax purposes, if you're here in the U.S. and you have interest from U.S. banks, dividends from U.S. companies, that becomes your U.S. source income. And where is the address of the payer? So this is important. So where you perform the services, let's look at the most 2 important on this slide. Let's go back over it. So the most 2 important points here: if you perform the services here, that's going to be U.S. source income. And if the payer of the scholarship is a U.S. payer, the address is U.S., that's going to be U.S. source income also.
Sam,
Yes.
we have a question in the chat, which is about a travel award.
Okay.
But the person is requesting to know which form they should fill if they're receiving a travel award.
What's the travel award for?
I'm not sure. That's not here, but it asked about a W-8 or a W-9.
Oh, okay.
If they're a
So
non-resident alien with a social security number.
yeah, okay. So if it's a reward, then you probably want to fill, it's a W-8 series, and probably the W-8 either BEN or ECI. It would depend on what the purpose of the reward, what's the source of the reward, what is it for? But it would be a W-8 that you would probably want to fill out for that. So if it's not for services, in other words, you're not being paid to do something, it's an award, then it's going to be a W-8 series form.
Okay.
Most likely. Okay.
Thank you, Sam.
All right, no problem. Most likely it'll be a BEN, but it also could be ECI. Probably not ECI, probably the BEN form. Okay. All right. Again, Glacier Tax Prep, GTP, does a great job of helping you come out with all the forms that you need to prepare your tax return. So that's a great source. Even if you come to TerpTax to get your return done, complete, this is a great place to go to get all your forms. We're going to talk about what those forms are so you know what you're looking at when you get to Glacier. First, you're going to want to know what your ITIN number is, or if you have a social security number. So things that you're going to need would be your U.S. tax identification number, either ITIN or social security number.
And
There's
Sam,
this.
regarding the ITIN, the W-8BEN to request the ITIN can be filed with the 1040. Is that still true?
So the form to request an ITIN is actually a W-7.
Okay.
And the way to, so let's talk about that for a second. The way to get this number, let's say you are looking at having to file an income tax return, you're a non-resident, and you don't have an ITIN, you don't have a social security number. So you're going to need to get an ITIN to fill out the form to submit it to the government. Well, wait a minute, I don't have a number. So what do I do? So you prepare the return. Step one is you prepare the return without a number. Step two, you fill out with that return the W-7 requesting the number. And then step three is you simply file all together all at once. And then the government will assign the ITIN to you and to the return you sent in. So the good news is you don't have to get the number first, which could take months to get. You file with the W-7, that's to request this number, the ITIN. Now, one word of caution is that when you go to the W-7, what you're going to find is they require a fairly lengthy list of forms to prove who you are. And the easiest way to prove who you are is your passport, which is great because it makes the whole process easier, except they want you to send in the original passport, which I don't recommend because the IRS is running behind schedule. You could be looking at months without a passport in your hands. You may look at a situation where you never even get it back from the IRS because they claim they can't find it. So you don't want to do that. What you want to do instead is you want to come to TerpTax and get your form completed along with the W-7. So you would get the 1040 NR and the W-7. You put it together as a package. We can direct you to what's known as a certified acceptance agent. They're going to cost just a little. We're shopping around for you right now. I think we've got someone who claims they might be able to do it for as little as $40. But what it allows you to do is to take these forms and your passport. You'll have to make an appointment. You go see them. It won't take long. Basically, what you'll do is you'll give the CAA, the Certified Acceptance your forms in W-7, you'll show them the passport. What they'll do is they'll file your forms for you while you're there. They'll do like an electronic filing or some kind of, however they do it. They'll mark in that filing that they certified that you brought in a valid passport. They'll give the passport back to you. It won't leave your hands. You go home with it. You come with it. You go home with it. And life is a lot less stressful because you didn't part with your passport for what could be months at a time. So that's for anyone who doesn't have the ITIN ahead of time or have had it assigned in another way. Hope that helps. All right. You will also, if you worked under CPT or OPT, you will get a W-2. That should be in your hands right about now. They were due January 31st to be mailed or sent by electronic means to all the employees that deserve to get it or should get a W-2. So you probably have that already, just in case this is what it looks like. And we're going to take a little bit of a look at this for purposes of doing what I like to call learning two things at once. And it may be more than two. So this is what the W-2 looks like. It's a wage and tax statement, and it will tell you what you earned for the year and what your withholding tax was, and which state is the source of that income. The employer makes all these decisions for you and fills this out. So it will be a one-stop shop. You can find out everything by what they send to you. And here's what you should see. You should see a number in box 1 for the amount they paid you. You may see a number here, so I'll put a little X, where they withheld some federal income tax. They may not have. Maybe your wages were too low for any tax to be withheld, but they may have. Here, down in this box, let's look there, you'll see the state where you worked. They'll put Maryland down, and they'll put the big X of how much you earned in Maryland, which is taxable in Maryland. And then they'll also do the same thing with the withholding for Maryland. If anything was withheld, they'll put that number down there. All right, so that doesn't teach us anything new, except now I want to teach you something new. If you're F1 or J1 and you're in your first 5 calendar years, then you are lucky to a certain extent compared to U.S. citizens, U.S. residents, in that you are not responsible to pay Social Security or Medicare tax, which can add up to roughly 7.5%. So that's nice that you don't have to pay that. And the way you'll know that is these boxes here are your Social Security and Medicare wages, and they should be 0, as well as the withholding for those taxes should be 0 as well if you're F1, J1. If you find a number in any of these boxes, then you need to contact TerpTax, you need to contact me, and I'll tell you exactly what to do. I've got a form all set for you. We can guide you because you will be eligible to get anything in these boxes back. Not only eligible, you're entitled. So we'll help you get that money back because you didn't have to pay it. So that's the good news, is we can help you with that. The bad news is if it's withheld, you have more stuff to do. So what you want to make sure to do is the following. Before you work anywhere that's going to be paying you by way of a W-2 wage or salary, and you can ask them, how am I being paid? Is it W-2? And they'll say yes or no. If it's W-2, what you want to make sure is that that employer knows that you're F1, J1 within your first 5 calendar years, and you should not have anything withheld for these taxes. You will do yourself a big favor doing that up front, saying to them, hey, don't do that because I'm not responsible. And it saves them money. They should be happy to hear that because they also have to pay the same, they have to match what you pay. So they don't have to do that either because you're exempt. So they'll be exempt as well. So they should be very happy. Okay, that's the W-2, which gives you this kind of information. In the event that you had any kind of benefits, you'll see some numbers there. That's okay. Don't worry about it. It would be showing whether health insurance is paid for you or any other kind of employee benefit. All right. Another form you might get for your taxes would be what's known as a 1099. There's a whole series of 1099 forms. They all start with the letters 1099, the numbers 1099. You got two that would be, 2 or 3 that would be applicable to you. 1099 interest, INT, as it sounds for interest, 1099 for dividends, if you have any US source dividends, 1099 NEC, if you worked as an independent contractor anywhere. So if you worked and you were doing it remote on your own time, and the employer, quote unquote, said, oh, you're not an employee for tax purposes, you're an independent contractor. So you would get the report of how much you earned on a 1099 NEC. There would be no withholding taxes on this at all. So you'll be responsible for paying those by yourself when you file your return. You'll owe those taxes to the extent that you owe any taxes, because they don't withhold on a 1099 NEC. This is for non-employee compensation. That's the NEC, non-employee compensation, otherwise known as an independent contractor. For those of you who want to keep track of some details, one thing to, and I encourage you to try to keep track of the details to the extent that you can. One thing to note is sometimes, quote unquote, an employer will try to pay you as an independent contractor because it saves them payroll taxes. So certain employers try to play, and I'm not accusing them, but they may be, because they may not be trying to play the game. They may just not be educated enough. They may be ignorant of the law, and they may be paying you as an independent contractor to avoid withholding, to avoid payroll taxes that they are responsible for. They're responsible for the withholding tax, even though it comes from your money. They're responsible to do it and to pay it to the government. So maybe they don't want to do that. And so they'll say, well, you're going to be independent contractor. They may even have you sign an independent contractor form. However, under United States law, signing a form doesn't make it so. Signing an independent contractor does not mean you are an independent contractor. In the event, and I'll say this way because I don't want to, we could spend 2 hours on it. So I'm just going to summarize. In the event that you're being asked to sign an independent contractor form, that you're going to be paid not as a W-2, and you are required to put in a certain number of hours, and you're required to be in the office, wherever that office might be, a certain number of days and hours as well. And you're required to follow their instructions, and you're required to do the work the way they tell you to do it. And you're required, and the more requirements that they have over how you do your job and when and where, chances are you're not an independent contractor. Independent contractor is like it sounds. You're independent. You're being asked to do a job. Do this job. Do it. We need it done by a certain date. Okay. But you can do it at night. You can do it at home. You can do it with your own forms, your own computers. You don't have to do it the way we tell you. You just have to do the job the way we would like the job to be done. Then you're possibly and probably independent. But you can see that there's this line that is not so easy to always define where the line begins and ends. So one more thing, I don't have a problem with getting a couple hundred emails during tax season. If this applies to any of you at any time, even all during the year, just email me and we'll help you figure out whether you got an issue with this particular quote unquote employer or not. We won't cause problems. We'll help you decide what to do about it. That's what we'll do.
Thanks, Sam. And I just want to bring up, we have quite a few questions about forms now in our chat.
Okay.
If I can just kind of go through them with you before we move on to the next form.
Sure.
We have someone who's asking us, what's the difference between a 1099 or a 1098? And do I need to get both if I received a 1098T?
Okay, so this was the next slide. So we'll stop. We'll answer this question, and we'll go
Okay.
1 or 2 slides ahead, because that was whoever asked that question, we rehearsed it before this whole thing started, because the timing was perfect, because that's the next form. So another form you would get is not a 1099, but a 1098. And you really only should get one type of 1098, and it's a 1098T. That's the only one you should get. And this applies if you pay tuition out of your own pocket or you had a scholarship helping you pay a tuition. It will show you the information about your scholarship and your tuition. And this is what it looks like. There's only two boxes that are important to you. So it should be pretty easy to read the form. Box 1 right here will show how much tuition was paid to this particular school. Here will be the name of the school, University of Maryland. And box 1 will show how much tuition and fees that were required to be paid by you in the year 2023. And then box 5 will show, as it says here, the scholarships or grants that you received for the year. This is a great time to, again, like we did with another slide, we learned two things or more than two things all at one time. This is a great way to do that. And then we'll go back to the questions. If what you're going to want to be doing, and what TerpTax will help you do as well as Glacier, is you're going to be comparing the number here to the number in box 1. Because if the number in box 5, the scholarship, is less than, so if 5 is less than 1, no problem. No tax implication, no tax consequence. You're fine. You don't even have to do anything with the 1098T because you're not eligible for education credits as a non-resident. So the form doesn't theoretically even have to go to your tax preparer or be put on your tax forms because it has no meaning. However, as you can imagine, when there's a left, there's always a right. So in the event that box 5 is greater than box 1 in terms of dollar amount, now you have a potential tax consequence, because under American law, if the amount of the scholarship is greater than the tuition required, it means that a certain portion of box 5 was being given to you for purposes of helping you with your food, your clothing, your rent, personal expenditures, as we call them, not required educational expenditures. And under American law, that may be taxable. It may be. It all depends on the circumstances. So you're going to need to get some more information. You're going to need to ask questions. One of the questions could very, very well be that you don't have to pay a tax on it because your tax treaty from whatever country you come from exempts you from having to pay tax even on the scholarship portion that is above and beyond the amount in box 1. China, for example, has an exemption. So you get US scholarships. Some of it's for personal expenditures, partying, entertainment, you name it. It's not going to be taxable in the United States during your 5 years here as F1, and maybe beyond that if you continue to be a student. Romania, we just came across that treaty the other day, and we looked in it, and that also, they're a country where that's exempt. The main thing I want to point out for all of you today, thank you for attending, and for those of you watching this, is don't listen to anybody who tells you, well, if you're F1, you never have to pay tax on your scholarship. That is patently false. Yes, there are many treaties that say, oh, you don't have to pay tax if box 5 is greater than box 1. Don't worry about it. Many treaties do that, but not all. Not all. So you need to determine which tax treaty the U.S. has with your country. If it doesn't have one, then it's the regular rule where if it's 5 is greater than 1, you're going to pay some tax, or at least it's taxable. That I can't say anything more about it other than don't use the old theory of what someone tells you that it's never taxable. That's not true. Okay. All right, let's go back to the questions.
Okay. Someone has written to us that on the W-2 form, the Social Security box and the other 3 are blank. Is a blank the same as a printed 0 on the W-2?
So you're saying that the W-2 here has nothing in for the Social Security number for the employee?
That's what they're saying to us. And they're saying there are another 3 boxes on that W-2 also blank.
Do they have a Social Security or ITIN number?
I have to ask.
I can, if they're not able to respond quickly, I can just give them a quick answer to it.
Yeah, I think a quick answer is what we're going to need here, and perhaps to say that if they can show the W-2 form to a TerpTax volunteer, they could also assist after looking at the form.
We could do that. It's surprising that that's happening because employers are supposed to have employees fill out that famous W-4 that we looked at earlier, where the person puts down their Social Security or their ITIN, and they're really not supposed to start paying somebody without that number, because how can they withhold otherwise? So if the person has an ITIN or a Social Security, they should go back to the employer and say, could you redo the W-2? Could you redo the W-2? Here's the number that should be on there. Could you do that? If they don't have an ITIN or a Social Security, then what's been given to them is perfectly fine. They'll use it to file the return with that W-7 asking for the ITIN. They'll send it in with the W-2 the way they normally would, and it's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. So Sam, this seems like a good time to just bring up that here in the state of Maryland, those people who are being paid by the state can begin their payroll using what the university calls a temporary Social Security. But that's a number they use in place of that Social Security that has a 00 in the 2 middle digits. So it goes 3 digits, 00, 4 digits, and that lets central payroll of the state know that this is not official and that the official Social Security number should replace it. So I want to remind the students that if they have received their Social Security number from the Social Security Administration and they have not given that number to their payroll in their departments, that they should do so that their record can be updated and those Social Security number can get onto that W-2.
Excellent. And also, I would add that just because it's a temporary number doesn't mean they can't file using that number if they need to.
Well, we call it a temporary number. I don't think it should be used outside of the university.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Fair enough. Okay. So what we would do is then go for the ITIN number when we do file it.
Right.
Perfect. Okay. That works for me. I think that's better.
Okay. Good.
Better advice. Okay. All right. Let's try 1 or 2 more questions and then we'll move forward.
We have a person who is asking about the 8843, and
Okay.
he or she feels that the other forms, because they changed tax residency status during the year.
Mm-hmm.
So I am a non-resident, and after that I completed my 5 years in the US, I am now considered resident alien. So the question is, how do I move forward with an 8843 or other forms for the tax year?
So if, let's say, your 5th year was 2023 and you were somewhere during that year, let's say July, just for purposes, July 1 was the end of your, actually it would be the following. Sorry about that. Hold on, let me do this one more time. If in 2023, let's do a quick example. 2019, you get the picture. We'll just do it quickly. 22. It's good recap for people. So this would be year 1, year 2, 3, 4. This is year 5. As of January 1, in theory, you have now expired your 5 years. Actually, you're in your 5th year. So the whole year for calendar 2023 doesn't count. All the days don't count. So you still need an 8843 for 2023 to show that it's your 5th calendar year. None of the days count. So in the 5th year, you still can't become a resident because you get 5 calendar years. So you still be a non-resident that year, still non-resident. Even though you might say, well, I came here on July 1, so why isn't July 1 here? The last year of my residency is 5 calendar years. So then 2024 becomes your first year where your days count and you may become a resident if you're here the right number of days. And this year becomes a real important year to file your 8843 so that the days of 2023 don't count in the 2024 year when you're determining whether you're a resident or not. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I think that should answer that for people. Thank you.
Okay, let's try one more question and we'll move forward.
Okay, this one is, what wage and tax statement does a W-8 BEN individual receive? I was told by my employer that only a W-9 individual receives a W-2.
Well, I think whoever was talking may have gotten some confusion there. Let's go over it. Let's do the following. So you've got, if you're asked by someone who wants to pay you a salary, a W-2 wage, you should be filling out for them, even if you're non-resident, you should be filling out a W-4. So this is for W-2 wages, W-2 payments as an employee. That should be a W-4. If you're going to become that independent contractor that we talked about, they'll ask you for a W-9. Now, if you're an independent contractor and they're paying you, oh, I see my screen didn't work. Okay, here we go. Here we go. So if you're going to be paid W-2 wages, they should be asking you for a W-4. W-4 simply tells them what your Social Security or ITIN is and a little information about how to withhold for you. It's not rocket science. You can answer the questions very simply. If you're going to be paid independent contractor, then they should be asking you to fill out a W-9 form. W-9 form will also just tell them where you live and your ITIN or Social Security, and that's all you have to tell them. However, if you are filling out a form for a W-9 independent contractor, they should also ask you to fill out a W-8 ECI, so they will not withhold taxes on the payments they're making to you. So ECI would apply to you there. W-8 BEN might be asked by an employer, but it really shouldn't be. W-8 BEN really should apply to any payor, any U.S. payor that's paying you scholarships, awards, interest, dividends. That's when you should be asked for that kind of form. And that form, this W-8 BEN series, is simply telling them how much they would have to withhold, if anything, from the award, from the interest, from the dividend. Many scholarships don't even ask our students to do it because they know what the statutory withholding rate is, and they don't need the student to tell them through a W-8 BEN filing. Technically, they could have asked for it. Does that make sense? Or you want me to repeat anything there?
I think right now in our discussion, it might just be good to have a discussion about the forms that we fill when we are getting enrolled or contracting with an individual, that those are upfront forms that then produce tax forms later in the year. Because we have questions about what forms do I fill if I get a fellowship. And I think there's the side of this where we want to say these are the tax reporting forms, and we have entry forms which then help you with those filing of taxes at this time of year. So to file my taxes, what forms do I fill, and what form receipts of my earnings would I need to in order to do that? I think there's been some confusion that's developed in the group.
Okay, let's hold on to that question. We'll summarize all that as we get close to the end. We're going through a bunch of forms now, and we're getting to that point where I'm going to give you the list, the laundry list of what forms they are. And by the way, I did say earlier that the Glacier Tax Prep actually walks you through all the forms you would need to file your returns. So that's another good source, but we're going to summarize it. I just want to get through a couple more slides and then we'll summarize it all up.
That sounds good, Sam. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so let's go forward. Let's see where we last left off. Okay. All right, there's one more form that I want to go through the details and then we'll do, I think then we're ready for the summary. And that's the 1042S. This is for income that is either within, is within some type of tax treaty benefit. The payor is the one responsible for filing this form. So they're the ones that are going to give it to our F1 students. The students don't have to fill the form out. Again, like the W-2, like the 1098s, like the 1099, it will come to you. And that form will tell you by what's indicated in this box here, box 1, what kind of income you were paid, whether it was scholarship or payment for services. It'll also tell you how much you made, the gross income there. And then it will tell you if it was subject to any tax rate whatsoever. If the rate here is 0, it means it was under a tax treaty, not taxable at all. That's fine, but they need to tell you that. They need to tell the government that. They need to explain it to the government. The payor has to do this. If it was subject to a tax rate, they're going to tell you what the rate was by the treaty, whatever the treaty's rate was supposed to be, or the rate by statute of the United States tax code, and they'll tell you what that is, and they'll tell you how much was paid to the government as a withholding tax. They'll tell that to you in one of the boxes somewhere here. Yeah, right there. They're going to say how much federal tax was withheld and paid over to the government, like it was on the W-2, but this is for monies not reported through the W-2. Usually it's for scholarships. That's the most common reason for getting a 1042-S form, as we see here, 1042-S. So that's what that form is used for. And again, it comes to you from the payor. They're the ones responsible for telling you. They're the ones who are going to look up the tax rate under the treaty and apply it as the treaty says. Once in a while, we find one where they seem to have ignored the tax treaty. So it's always good to just show it to us. We're going to need it anyway, and we'll take a look. All right, let's see where we're holding here. All right, it's left to, can I claim a treaty benefit? Let's talk about that. And the answer is going to be possibly. And the way you're going to the way you're going to find out is you're going to have to look at the tax treaty. You may need some assistance doing that. That's perfectly understandable. Tax treaties are not easy to read. However, one thing you can do first is just go on and do a Google search and see if your country even has a tax treaty with the US. We don't have tax treaties with all the countries of the world. Matter of fact, I think it's only 66 countries we have tax treaties with right now. And that means that if your country doesn't have a tax treaty, you don't have any treaty benefits. If you have a treaty, maybe there's some benefits you get. Like we mentioned, China has some decent benefits. India, by the way, also has a very unusual benefit. No other country do we give this benefit to, and that's our students from India get the full standard deduction on their income tax return. And that means that they probably won't owe any US taxes unless they make a pretty good, decent amount of money here. So the answer is yes, you can claim a tax treaty benefit. All right, and we are about to summarize. On that note, let's do a quick, everybody take a breath while I plug in to make sure I don't lose everybody here. See, the computer was all juiced up before we started, but it's getting tired because it's tax law. All right, okay, here we go. So let's do some summarization. What forms do I have to fill out? I think that was one of the questions. Okay. 8843, which you can get from Glacier, or if you're going to have a full return done by TerpTax, we'll be doing it for you. You're going to need to fill out a 1040 non-resident if you had some income from a U.S. source that we spoke about. By the way, we're coming to what forms you're going to need. We're coming to that. I don't know what that was for. There's the 1040 NR. That's what it looks like. It's fun. It comes with many pages. We won't go through all the pages. This is the form that'll show where you come from, what country you come from, and whether you have any treaty benefits. It'll be mentioned right there if you're taking advantage of any. Here's the form to determine if you're an independent contractor or not, so don't worry about that. When do I need to file by? It's Monday, April 15th here in the United States this year. You can get an extension. There's an automatic extension to October 15th if you need it. And that's pretty much without any penalties, although you're supposed to pay your tax by the 15th. So whatever tax you might owe, you're supposed to pay by the 15th of April. Most of our clients don't owe much tax at all, and the penalties usually not administered if it's a small amount of tax owed. But just for the record, if you're going to get an extension, you should quickly calculate whether you're going to owe any tax or not. If you have a refund, no problem. You can get your extension without a problem. What about, okay, before we do the state income tax returns, let's talk about what forms you need to bring to get your tax return done. First of all, you're going to need to show whoever's preparing the return your passport. You're going to need to bring your social security number or your ITIN, preferably the form showing the official number. You're going to preferably, but if you don't have that, we can accept, any tax preparer can accept your word on what the number is supposed to be. You may need to bring a W-2 if that's applicable. Let me just see one thing a second. Hold on. Okay, we're doing good. You may have a 1099 of some sort, if applicable. You probably will have a 1098-T, because most of you have some sort of scholarship, but again, you may not. You may have a 1042-S, particularly if you had a scholarship or you had some type of employment with the university. So if you had some type of employment with the university, chances are you're going to have both a W-2 and a 1042-S, chances are, particularly if the country you are with or came from has a treaty with us. And I think that's it. So this 1099 could be with any number of letters. So it's all kinds of 1099s. The 1098, the only one that you really would have most likely here would be the 1098-T, the 1042-S. And all those W-8s, W-9s, we don't need those. W-4 goes to the employer. We don't need it. You can bring it and show it to us if you want. The W-9 goes to the independent contractor. The W-8s, all of the W-8s, again, we don't really need to see those. You can bring them if you wish. If you have questions on how to fill it out, you can email us to ask, and we'll be glad to help you. But all the W-8s, these things don't really come to us. The only W form that comes to us is the W-2. All of these here are not needed to prepare an income tax return, either for resident or non-resident. And that's pretty much it. Now, we'll ask you questions, and we're going to have some forms for you to fill out if you come to TerpTax. No big deal, just simply informational returns which show us the address, where you're living, and date that you came to the United States. But there's no forms for that other than internally within our system. I'm going to hold here for a minute and see if we have any questions, then I'll start talking about state income taxes.
Okay. We do have some follow-up questions on the W-2.
Okay.
So we have a question about box 1 on the W-2, which is wages, tips, and other compensation, and box 16, which is state wages, tips, etc. And why is there a mismatch in the amounts?
Oh, okay. Well, I did. That's a good question, and I was trying to avoid that one because that's not because I can't answer it, but it creates a whole new another hour to our seminar. But I'll give a quick answer to it. So when you're doing your evaluation, know that I skipped that for I'll admittedly a selfish reason. Okay. All right. Oftentimes, here's the question. for many of you, you're going to see a small little X as your gross wages in terms of federal, because this is the federal side up here. This is the state side down there. So you might see a really small number in box one. And then down with the Maryland or any state, you may see a huge X, and it may be $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 more than the X amount in box one. The reason for that, and we actually, this is also perfectly timed because I was going to get into the state income taxes right now. So this is perfectly timed. The reason for that is that there are tax treaties that the federal government has with certain countries, like 66 countries, as we mentioned, but not all of the, welcome to the United States, by the way, not all of the states follow the tax treaty. If the tax treaty was done by the federal government, and the state has the right to say, oh, we'll follow that too, or we're not going to follow it. You here at the University of Maryland, living in Maryland, are the lucky recipients of a state that doesn't follow the US income tax treaties with any country in the world. So what happens is that your tax treaty may say, you don't have to pay taxes on most of your wages. You get to just pay taxes on a small little amount. But Maryland will say, no dice. You have to pay Maryland taxes on the whole amount. We don't follow the treaty. And that's why you're going to see that mismatch in numbers between the two. Before you throw stones at the messenger, meaning myself, let me just let you know that the tax rate in Maryland is generally a little lower than the federal government. So the good news is that of the two, it's better this way than it would be the other way. It's never pleasant, but most of the time the withholding will have taken care of the taxes you owe in Maryland. So you're not going to owe at the end of the year when you file your return. It'll have already been paid for you. Yeah, you paid it, came out of your salary, came out of your wages, but that's the story. All right, next question. I don't hear you, Debbie. So Sue.
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Here we go. Some members of our audience are on an A visa, A1, and they're wondering how they file electronically as a non-resident and how they would pay their taxes.
Oh, okay. As far as I'm aware, I would have to look that up.
Okay.
Because I'm not having mental recall of A1 at the moment, but I'm going to.
It's a diplomatic visa.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I've done some diplomatic returns, but it's been a long time. So some of the diplomats don't even have to file. It depends on the circumstances. So that would be my first question: is that do they even have to file a tax return? But I'm not aware of the current electronic system not allowing for electronic filing for anybody. I'm going to go on the sort of half record of them, assuming they could still file electronically, but I don't know. So this is one that we could put up on the list for me to answer by email to whoever would like me to do that.
Or for the person to go back to the embassy or foreign government that they're representing in the United States and ask the question of the visa issuer.
They could do that. And from my experience with the couple of diplomats that I did do about 10 years ago, good luck.
Well, we have a question from an F1 student who has a spouse with them.
And she's, okay.
The
Keep
question
going.
is, how do I file my tax with my dependent? The dependent has changed from an F2 dependent to an F1, another F1 student. But sounds like they'd like to file jointly.
Oh, so that's a very good question. I'm assuming that the spouse is F2, and they're telling me the spouse changed to a F1?
Yes, partial year F2, partial year F1.
Okay. The basic answer is there are some exceptions to this, not many, but the basic answer is you're both going to have to file separately. There is no joint return option that really applies for people who are both F1, even though they're legally married.
Okay, very good. And back to that W-2, since we had it up.
Okay.
This person wants to know if the boxes 3, 4, 5, and 6 are blank. Is that okay, or should they have a 0 in the box?
Okay, we did mention this, and by the way, I'm going to switch screens because I mistakenly erased the form. Okay, so hold on a second. Let me just go get the form. Form. Don't read the headlines; they're depressing. Let's take a quick look. I did cover this, but it's a good question to go over again because I don't want people to miss this. Of course, we at TerpTax will help you catch it, but I think it's good if everybody comes prepared about it ahead of time. So under the W-2, boxes 3, 4, 5, and 6 apply to Social Security, Medicare. If you're F1 or J1, now it only applies to F1s and J1s, doesn't apply to F2s or J2s. But if you are that category with the 1, you should not have anything in boxes 3, 4, 5, 6. If you do, email us, email me. I'll tell you what to do. We can advise you. We can help you. You really should get the monies that are in boxes 4 and 6 back, and your employer should be the one theoretically giving it back to you. They won't always cooperate, but and then if they don't, we tell you what to do, how to continue to file to get the refund for those amounts. That's why I said before, try to, whoever's going to be paying you W-2 wages, try to tell them ahead of time, hey, I'm an F1, I'm a J1, you don't have to pay those taxes. It should be 0 in those boxes.
And a couple of people who feel they either may have made an error on last year's taxes or failed to file last year's taxes completely. How would you suggest they receive assistance from TerpTax?
Okay, we can go back all the way to 2018 at the moment, and we can do returns through 2018 and 23. And so therefore, if you did not do what you were, let's say you went to TurboTax. If you're an F1 and you're in your 5 years period, and during that 5-year period, you went to TurboTax, you filed, unbeknownst to you, a 1040 without the letters NR. That is wrong. It needs to be amended. We can easily help you amend it. It's not a very difficult amended return to do, but it has to be amended. And if you didn't file, then we can file those too, all the way back to 2018.
So if someone feels that they incorrectly filed in a prior year, they don't fix it on this year's taxes. They file an amended form for the tax year that they are concerned about.
Correct. That's exactly right. You can't, there are very few changes you can make in the current year. None of them would apply to our F1, J1 students.
Okay. And I think that we have one question that has to do with TerpTax in particular.
Okay.
And it has to do with tax slayer. If I have no taxes withheld by the state and federal government, can I go ahead and use tax slayer directly to file my taxes and schedule an asynchronous appointment with TerpTax for any other issues?
Yes, you can. Hold on for 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going to go back to the state income tax situation, talk about that, and get right into the TerpTax advertisement and explain exactly what you can do, which is, yes, we have the ability for you to get the tax layer yourself. You don't have to do it and pay anything. So hold on to your hat. Okay?
Thank you, Sam.
All right, no problem. Let's go to the end, and then we'll see how much time we have for other questions. What about state income taxes? Well, we covered that beautifully with that question about box 1 on the W-2 compared to the income shown for the state. We covered the fact that you need to pay state income taxes, and you may have to file more than one state if you were in more than one state during the calendar year 2023. We can do multiple states. That's the good news. So don't worry about it. You'll just have to know that you may have to file in more than one state. What if the family's moving to the U.S. for a permanent basis? Why did I put that question on here? That's a good question. in itself. Oh, I know why I put it on there. Okay. We were getting, the best way to explain this to our audience is I was having visions of grandeur on what TerpTax could do. Well, if your family is planning on moving to the United States permanently, we are looking to get into some tax planning advisory type, and we could do some pre-immigration tax planning for you. That's for my advanced tax students. So, consider that an add-on to what we're trying to do here for the school. Okay. All right. What if I'm an F1 for more than 5 years? All right. Well, most likely you're going to be a resident for U.S. tax purposes. That changes the game of how you need to look at who you are in terms of vis-a-vis the United States, because now all of a sudden it's your worldwide income. Let's take a look at this. That's the biggest change that happens once you're outside of F1 over the 5 years. You have to pay tax on your income worldwide. So you would need, the best way to describe this is when you're transitioning from non-resident tax returns to a resident, you probably want to come to us or get a tax advisor to sit down and just say, okay, what's it going to look like? What am I going to need to do? Because there's a whole new set of rules that come into place once you're a resident. This is important. This is big. It's a big transition. I can't say anything more about it right this minute, other than you're going to need some assistance. Word to the wise. All right, how much does it cost to get a tax return done? Well, the answer to that is, here's TerpTax, and it's nothing, zero, no tax whatsoever. And here's the schedule that we have. You've got the ability to upload your documents, and it'll walk you through what documents to upload in case you didn't remember what we went through there. That's fine. You can get, there are still some in-person appointments left between now and the April 15th date. In the event that you don't see one open, you can get an asynchronous appointment, which I encourage you to do because it's the same service, except you don't have to come in person. You'll meet, you don't even meet with somebody unless it's necessary. You'll meet by Zoom, and you'll just do forms back and forth and emails back and forth. It works fine. I don't see anything wrong with it. Here's the newest thing, which is you can get access to TaxSlayer for free through our system. Do the return yourself. You can request at any time assistance for free, either by Zoom, phone call, or in person. We'll do it. We'll be happy to do it if you're preparing the return yourself. No problem. And if you are, like me, a real procrastinator, you'll be able to file your tax return extension as you get closer to the April 15th filing date when we get close to that. Here's the website for getting to this website here. Here's the URL, terptaxumd.org. For all of you that are in the school, don't do it right away. Give me about 5 to 10 days, but you can email me with questions in the next 5 days or so. Don't do it today. But you can email me questions, and you'll find my name easily enough if you start putting it in the Gmail that we have here at school, WER at, you guessed it, umd.edu. I'll be happy to take it. I just need a little time I may need a little time to answer them, but I will answer questions. It's WER, that's an R, all lowercase. All right, so here's us, here's me. I'm happy to help. And on that note, I can still take some more questions because I think we have a couple more minutes, but I'll go back and see all the empty boxes with names. If you don't have questions there, I can look at the email that came in with some questions ahead of time.
Okay. I just want to remind students that one of the things that they can do, because not everyone will have only worked for one entity. We may have students that will have done an internship during the summer, and maybe that was paid. So I think it's important for the students to inventory who they had employment with or received income from over the 2023 year, because they should expect some tax forms from each of those entities. Is that correct?
Yes, if you work for an entity, you would get a W-2. You could have more than one W-2. You could have more than one 1099. You could have more than one 1098-T. There can be multiple of those same forms that we spoke about. So if you had different employers, you should get W-2s from each one of those. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And the point about working in various states is also true. You may get from one employer, if you worked in Georgia and Maryland, you'll get two W-2s from the same employer, and that's perfectly fine.
Right. So when a student is looking for a W-2, they need to be thinking about where should that W-2 be coming from, and then finding out how to get it from that entity.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have a question about a form 13614NR. That sounds.
That's like an information return. I think a form's not it's not a return. Let me just look that up a second. I think I know what that is. I think that deals with us. That's TerpTax.
Right.
I
Yes,
think.
and that's what maybe we can explain what that form's purpose is.
13614. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's the form we do internally where we ask you to fill it out, I believe. Let me just take a look first. Hold on. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Yeah, it's an intake form. Okay, so that form is not an official form. That's a form that we use. We're under the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program of the Internal Revenue Service. That's how we get the software for free. And basically, we'll almost always use that form for you telling us about yourself. It's like a little biography. Hey, guess who I am and where you live and all that kind of stuff.
If someone thinks they made an error on the form, do they just recontact TerpTax to correct the error?
If they made a form error on that intake form, 13614, yeah, they just tell us.
Mm-hmm.
They can change it, or they can just email us. That you should, when you're working with TerpTax, my instructions to the volunteers this year, and I think they're following through, is you should have an email with a particular volunteer. Once you are in our system and you're using us for self-prepare or asynchronous or in person, you should have a contact email address with somebody's, either the team leader or the person preparing your return. So you won't have to rely on the general email box after you start. If you don't get an email from you started, you had your in-person appointment, and you don't have a direct email to anybody other than the general email, let me know, because I don't want it to work that way. I want it to be a very personalized service once you're in the system, and that way you can email your questions or changes directly to the person who will take care of it.
Great, thank you. We can go to some questions that you received prior to our presentation.
Okay.
May I interject? There is one question in the chat, Sue and Sam. I'll just read it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on an F1. I live in Virginia, but worked part-time for the University of Maryland. Should I file for Virginia state tax or Maryland?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. And the answer to that will be, since you live in Virginia, Maryland, that payment for Maryland may have followed what is known as the principle of reciprocity, not reporting it as Maryland wages. They should be reporting it as Virginia. Had they known that you were living in Virginia, if they didn't know that, they're going to give you a W-2 as Maryland. In that case, if there are Maryland withholding taxes, you're going to need to file in both states. You'll get all the Maryland back. You'll owe maybe a few dollars to Virginia. It should wash out fairly equally. But one more time to just refresh, to say what I just said, because I said this fast, is the employer in Maryland should not have given you a Maryland W-2. They should have marked on the return that they gave you as Virginia resident, in which case you'll only need to file in Virginia. However, if they didn't know you were living in Virginia for some reason, you're going to get a Maryland W-2 from them, but you'll need both W-2s for the federal return anyway. So you should have two W-2s. If the employer didn't follow reciprocity, knowing you lived in Virginia, they'll have some Maryland tax on there. You'll have to file in both states. Not a big deal. Okay.
Thank you, Sam.
Okay, let's see. What if you were unemployed for a whole of 2023, but were employed in 2022? The employment in 2022 was accompanied by a W-2 form, which would be correct. But you didn't have any W-2 in 23. It's okay. Each year is by itself. If you earned money in 2022, fine. If you didn't earn any money in 2023, that's the way it is. It's not a big deal. You may not have to file in 2023 if you had no other income whatsoever of U.S. source, and your F1 may not even have to file, just that 8843, and you're done. Each year stands on its own. Let's see what else we got here. How do I take into consideration for tax filing if I'm living in a different state? But oh, that was the same question. Okay, good. Transactions through Venmo, PayPal, Zelle. Oh, wow. If you're getting that, that would be surprising, because I thought the threshold was still like 25,000. But if you're getting that, you sort of have to go through and determine whether any of it is taxable. You could have, so if you get it's a form 1099K, I believe. If you get that, that's a special case. Come see me, come see us. We'll help you take care of it. But if you're doing Uber or Lyft and you're getting that form, then you got some tax issues to report. You're doing some independent contractor work, and that would be the reason why you would get those payments. If you're getting those payments just because you did a lot of transactions through it and none of it's for earned income, then there's no reporting requirements per se. All right, let's go ahead.
Sam, we just got a question pop up in our question and answer.
Okay.
I am on F1 and have a social security number since 2015. I only worked in the US during 2022 and I did not file taxes. Should I report the previous years of overseas income, meaning the 2015 to 2022, and can they still file for 2022?
Okay, one more time. Read that. I didn't see where that question was going. Go ahead.
Well, I think the one question is, I earned income inside the US during 2022, and I did not file taxes.
And before that, in 2015,
their presence has always been F1, but they have been with a social security number since 2015.
Were they in the US 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, et cetera, or are they out of the country?
Well, they're not being specific about that. So
okay.
Would this person need to just complete a substantial presence test?
So if they were here those years and when they started F1, then they've expired the 5 calendar years, and in 2022 for sure they would have had to apply the substantial presence test to determine residency or non-residency. And that would have really started, let's see, sorry for this counting on fingers, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. It really would have started in 2020 if they had been here those years.
And we have been given additional information that the years of 2017 to 2020, the person is saying they were outside of the United States.
Outside the United States. Okay.
For 3 of the years, 3 of the 7.
Okay. And not in the United States one day of any of those years?
I think that this person would need to get specific by visiting TerpTax at this point.
Yeah, that person can email me direct. And I'll accept that email after 7:30 tonight. That'll be fine. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Sam.
Okay, no problem. That one I want to see myself. Okay.
Well, Sam and Sue, I want to let you know it's 1:30, and I promised that I would give you a break from all this workshopping.
Yeah.
I cannot thank you enough for sitting with us and sharing. Gosh, what a breadth of knowledge you both have about taxes, and I appreciate your kind approach to helping students with what appears to be a mountain to climb, but I know you will make it easier for students whenever possible. So thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you so much.
You too, Debbie. Sam, thank you.
What a great team. This is I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yep. And I would be remiss if we didn't also recognize the grad school because they partnered with TerpTax to provide this service to graduate students. So yay, grad school. We appreciate you.
Yes, and they support TerpTax, so we're very thankful for that too.
Yep. And finally, thank you to everyone who joined us on Zoom and those who watched the recording. It's always good for us to spend some time together. We have a workshop next week, taxes for domestic students. I probably won't see you there, but I hope to see you the following week on March 5th. We're going to be meeting in person with free food. The topic is wills and estate planning. And don't think you're too young to start talking about this. So March 5th, I will send you an email to give you a reminder of that. Remember to complete the workshop evaluation. And we're done. Thanks, everyone. And have a good week. And let us know if legal aid, TerpTax, or ISSS can help you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, ladies.
Bye, Sam.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.